This
Great.
conference will now be recorded.
All right, Dr. Clements, I think it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with everyone. I know it certainly is a different time for all of us, and particularly here in the school district. But we have lots of information to share about how we're trying to manage it. And hopefully some of it will be insightful and some of it will probably prompt questions. Feel free. I'll go through a little bit and then maybe we could open it up to more dialogue as we get down through. Up on our elementary kids, pre-K through 5, are attending class 5 days virtual or attending 5 days a week. And currently we have that. And then secondary schools, they are on a hybrid model.
Danny, you're freezing up.
I'm freezing up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're missing out on words from you or what, but it is a little halting. It's skipping around just a little bit.
Is that any better?
Yeah, let's try it.
Are on the hybrid model, they're going either Monday or Tuesday or Thursday.
Yeah, Dan, we heard Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, and then you cut out again. Are you using a wireless connection?
Yeah.
It may be, I don't know if you're in like the middle of a building or something and reception is bad, but yeah, take that for what you will.
A different office and see if that doesn't help things. I'm basically right under our wireless access point. Still nothing?
It sounded a little better now.
But no camera?
Camera's working, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's see what we can do now. So back to our secondary kids are in a hybrid model, so they go Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Friday. At high school, we have about 35% of our kids that are virtual, which is causing some problems for us in terms of kids' success and engagement. We have struggled this year at the secondary school with the high number of failures, the high number of Fs that we're seeing district-wide, which has caused us to rethink of how we're grading kids, how we're holding them accountable, and really how we're engaging them. Our teachers are working extremely hard, but it has been a real challenge for us. We're hoping by the end of the semester to get our failure rates back into check. Last we checked, 65% of the kids within North Kansas City have 1 F. It's challenging when you're face to face. It's incredibly challenging when you're virtual. Our most marginalized kids are the ones struggling the most. They're making up the large part of that 65% because they have multiple Fs. And so that's been a true struggle for us. In terms of positivity rate, though, we're doing pretty well as a school district. We are about 0.3% positive. 0.3% is much better than our community. We claim that some of what our success is coming from is everybody wears a mask. We're doing our social distancing the best we can, trying to allow 3 feet between our students. We have different, our kids are eating lunch in a classroom with a cohort of kids rather than in a crowded lunchroom. We're trying to fill our buses from back to front so kids aren't interacting with each other and they're wearing masks on the bus as well. Lots of good things going on there. So we're actually believe that kids being in school is safer than kids being out in the community at restaurants, grocery stores, and those places because we're doing pretty well with enforcing. We were pushed pretty hard early on that people thought we wouldn't be able to enforce the mask mandate, But our kids have been fabulous. That has not been an issue. Even for our 3 and 4-year-olds, I was at Pleasant Valley today visiting with that staff, and they're not having issues at all with our kids wearing masks, which is a little bit surprising. We knew that our kids would try, but they're being pretty consistent in doing that, which has really helped us. Much like our community, we have not had a great week. We've seen more kids test positive, more teachers test positive than we have at any time since we've been open. I think yesterday alone we had 16 cases of positive cases, which is about double our record of a most we've ever had. So our community is definitely trending in the wrong way, which is really concerning for us as we're trying to ramp up more face-to-face opportunities for kids. It's going to be a challenge. You know, one of the things that we've been fortunate enough with is that our positivity rate's been somewhat low. So we've been able to not see much spread throughout our school district. If kids are masked up, we're not seeing them catching the COVID when they are exposed to someone that does have it. And so that's been a positive. My fear is if the community rate keeps jumping as it is, that might change a little bit, that we may see more transfer here at school than what we're currently seeing. North Kansas City employs 34 contact tracers. Our social workers have all been trained and have now doing a lot of contact tracing rather than social work. We hired a person from Platte County Health to manage our contact tracing and have been somewhat effective, but we are sending a lot of people home. But the good part is the folks we are sending home don't seem to be contracting COVID. They may be exposed, but they're not contracting it. In terms of that, the good news is that DESE has given us 24,000 COVID tests. It's the nasal swab 15-minute test. And so we're going to be able to use those with kids that aren't feeling well and parents give us consent, or staff that aren't feeling well. And that should help us with this exposure piece a little bit. Because currently, you know, if you go get tested, chances are it's about a 3-day wait period to find out if you've tested positive. And during that 3 days, we're seeing a lot of exposure. We're in the increasing exposure. You would think once someone was tested, they would stay home until the results came in. That is absolutely not the case at all. They send their kids, and then we find out that a test was pending, and then they come up positive, which knocks out half a classroom or more in terms of that. So COVID's been a challenge. We'd like to get back more face-to-face when it's safe to do it. We're focusing on the how and not the when. The when is so darn difficult because we can't predict the rate of spread in our community, and the health experts are telling us we can only expect it to get worse through what we saw with the long lines at the election, Thanksgiving, and Christmas coming up. They anticipate that community spread is going to grow at each one of those points, which will make it extremely challenging for us to have more face-to-face at the secondary. At the same time, we're fighting this moral dilemma because our kids are not being as successful as they've been, and we're seeing more social emotional needs from our kids because they're not at school and they're not having relationships with their friends or what have you. And so the moral dilemma is, do you try to find a way to bring them back knowing that it's not as safe as we'd like it to be, or do you continue to hold out and know that your failure rate's going to remain a little bit higher than what it should be? And that's something that we're talking with our Board of Education on just about a weekly basis. And so what we're currently doing is we send a notice out to every one of our families yesterday or the day before, asking them to commit to a form of education for second semester, whether you want to be virtual or face-to-face. And then what we're going to do is try to evaluate those numbers of what our class sizes might look like to see if there's some places we might be able to do more face-to-face with, because class sizes are pretty good with, you know, some schools having as much as 35% virtual attendance. That allows class sizes to be a little bit better. It also requires teachers to work harder because they're teaching both kids in person, and then after they're done with that, they're going in and working with their virtual students. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us as well. We will continue to figure that piece out. Do we have any questions on COVID in the school district before we move on to maybe talk a little bit about our construction projects and our overall health of the school district?
Everything you're doing is greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Deb. And we certainly appreciate our community support and your efforts to try to get us some CARES Act dollars. As you can imagine, the state cut us pretty healthy this year. I think at one point we were up to 12 million in reduction of revenues from our state. And some of the CARES Act money has offset that pretty decently. I think last check we were 7 million down from our budget. And so the economy is seeming to pick up. So I'm hoping Governor Parsons will release some of the withholdings that he had to try to get us closer to zero. But certainly this has been an expensive year when you talk about buying the plexiglass dividers, all the PPE, the cleaning supplies. We have these huge foggers we go in and disinfect classrooms and school buses on a daily basis. That's been a pretty expensive venture, but it's worth it if we can keep our kids in school.
I'd like to make a comment on that too. Everybody dogs up Gene and Luann at our county commission, but they're the two voted to get that money into our schools, into our cities, and no other county has done that. And so you've got the money, you can spend it how you see fit, and instead of some county bureaucrat telling you how to do it. And hats off to them.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say we received that money extremely quick from the county. That was a nice bump because at the time that's when we were 12 million down. So I think we got nearly I think it's 1.7 from the county, which helped us that with our initial purchase of PPE and cleaning supplies to start moving us forward just this summer. So it was helpful.
Tell Matt Fritz that Lori placed a call for him, I think this morning. We finally got the contract that includes dollars for the school districts. Yesterday afternoon, it has been a slugger, but we got it done. With the support, Heather Hall and Kevin O'Neill have really, really been enthusiastically, adamantly supportive of our school districts. Yeah,
they have been absolutely wonderful. And Deb's persistence, we all know how persistent Deb is, and it certainly is benefiting the school district right now. It's just, it is an absolute dogfight. You know, in terms of the school district right now, we have this contingency of teachers that are very scared to have a lot of kids in their classroom. And I think we understand it. Some of them are in that high risk category and such. And then we have a strong contingency of parents that, and I don't mean this lightly, some of them don't even believe COVID exists. And so you have these two freight trains coming right at each other, which is a difficult situation for us as we try to find the right balance between virtual and in person and such. It's difficult because we don't see the successes we've seen in the past, and yet we haven't really pleased anyone either. And so it's not just North Kansas City, it's all school districts in our state and our nation that are having the same types of battles. But we're trying to get closer to where we can please more people. Yeah. Well, I think the next big thing we can talk about is some of the construction projects that are taking place within our organization. You know, we were fortunate enough last June to be supported by our community for a $155 million bond issue. I think it's the largest one ever in North Kansas City, and we are certainly very thankful for the opportunity to expand. And really, right now, we're getting great pricing on our construction projects. I think people are nervous going into the winter months about having enough work. So we're getting a lot of bidders, and we're seeing prices come in at or under our projected budget. So we're excited to see that. Probably the biggest one we got going on right now is our Early Childhood Center over on Antioch Road. Used to be the Hobby Lobby Price Chopper. It's 114,000 square feet dedicated to 3 and 4 year olds. Half that building's dedicated to developmentally delayed 3 and 4 year olds, and the other half will be dedicated to just normal 3 and 4 year olds that either qualify through Title I services or are a parent pay option for our community. certainly, we're talking about expanding our early childhood program by 700 kids. And I think total we'll have somewhere around 1,100 early childhood kids in our school district, which will be fantastic and give our kids a jump start on education. And the building is so incredible. I always tell people it's going to be next to Disney World, the happiest place on earth for kids to be, and can't wait to see that open. We're opening phase 1 in December, and that's for our developmentally disabled kids, 3 and 4 year olds, and they'll move over from Pleasant Valley into our facility there. And then by April, they're turning over the rest of the building, which is the Hobby Lobby portion. For the rest of our preschool programming, we'll have some shift over there in April, and then the rest will start next August for us. But really, a state-of-the-art facility. It's so cool. If you have a young person that has a disability, this is the place you would want them to be in the state of Missouri, without a doubt. We have harnesses, swings, all kinds of different apparatuses that will actually allow kids to participate with their friends for the first time on a playground or in a gymnasium. Within a classroom that they may not be able to walk, but we can get them in some type of a harness so that they can get in there and weight supported participate with their friends. Each one of these classrooms has a bathroom with a changing table, and we are going to move all of our occupational therapists, our autism folks. We're going to have just about every service that a 3 and 4 year old could ever need within one facility, and it's going to be absolutely remarkable. It's going to be something that this community can hang their hat on for many years. I suspect we'll see families try to move into our school district to take advantage of these services that just simply aren't allowed or aren't provided in many different areas throughout our state, without our nation. But it's something that I hope we can all be proud of. One of the things I'd love to do when we get a little further down the road is to invite you guys out to take a tour. It is set up in a way that if you're a 3 and 4 year old, it's the perfect way to start your educational career, and certainly couldn't be more proud of that project. We're having a little bit of trouble with the guy that owns the rest of the mall. He's concerned that we're taking up too much parking, but since we bought both of his anchor stores, we're not that concerned about it, but we're having to work through some of those issues. But we don't anticipate that that'll cause us any delay in construction or opening the center. And we're looking forward to that. Do we have any questions or comments that someone would like to make on the Early Childhood Center, or is there information that I could provide that might help you? Fair enough. The other big projects that we just kicked off recently was Oak Park and Winnetonka. We are trying to renovate both Oak Park and Winnetonka to ensure that the students that attend both of those schools have the same opportunities that the kids that attend Staley and Northtown do. We've invested a lot of money in Northtown recently. Staley's 11, 12 years old, so it's reasonably new. We're actually adding a wing, an academic wing on the Staley because they're growing so fast. But really putting money into Winnetonka and Oak Park so that the kids there have every opportunity that they would attending other schools. A couple years ago, we put a new entrance on Tonka. We're doing the same thing at Oak Park on the south side, where about 70% of our community enters our building. We're increasing our security measures. We're putting in, converting the old gym back into a gym, and building a new weight room for them, as well as stadium projects at both of them, remodeling the library at Winnetonka, and putting on some more collaborative space at Winnetonka for larger groups of kids to meet once COVID's over and to receive their instruction. Two really great projects, two projects that I think will bring a lot of pride within the communities. And one at Oak Park, we're extremely excited about because we're working in cooperation with Gladstone, Scott, and his team. We're going to do a dual restroom concession that we'll be able to share with the theater and the park folks. And that'll provide some shared space where, we obviously don't need it during the summer when they do the theater in the park and some of their events at the park. But in the fall, when we ramp up for football, soccer, band competitions, and then the spring with track and soccer again, will really provide us an opportunity to utilize those facilities. But they're sharing in the cost of that, and we are pleased to have that going on. So fantastic project. Gladstone's always so good to work with us and help us along the way. Two big equity projects we have going on right now that I'm most proud of is one of the things that I talked about with the Board of Education when they hired me is that we have some outstanding facilities within the school district, but we also have some facilities that we shouldn't be very proud of. And how do we ensure that regardless of whatever attendance boundary you're in or school you attend, that you have the same great facilities as maybe in the north? And so our first step, as everybody knows, with Northtown. Northtown was falling apart right below our feet. And so we've invested some resources in that, and it's one of the finest high schools in our state. Now we're taking a look at a couple of our elementary schools that are in pretty bad condition as well, and being Maplewood and Davidson Elementary Schools. Both of those, the board has approved, with the bond issue proceeds, the board has approved the architectural design, and we are ready to start breaking ground within the next month on both of those buildings. They won't be open for the next school year, but the following year after that, we'll have new facilities on both sites, and then we'll be taking down the old buildings, and those will be our parking lots. The cool thing about both buildings is we're increasing the capacity of both sites so that we may be able to redraw boundary lines to resolve some of our crowdedness at maybe a Topping or a Crestview as we continue to look forward in our community. I don't know how many of you received John DeBush's report on building permits, but as you can see, for like the 5th year in a row, North Kansas City smoked everybody else in building permits. We have to continue to focus on finding places for kids. That has been a challenge for us, but our community's been behind us and it's been working well. So, you know, our balance in North Kansas City with our board has been fix up some of your older facilities to ensure that there's equity amongst facilities, but also plan for the future and continue to build your capacity so that we're ready for when these kids show up. We've bitten off some of our biggest ones. Northtown was by far our biggest one. The Early Childhood Center was second. We just didn't have enough capacity there. Now we're picking off some of these poor conditioned elementary schools and adding on up north to some existing buildings as we continue to increase capacity. And then I know Dave's on this phone call, but another big project for us in the near future will be Hodge Park. We are very fortunate the Parks Department's worked with us in acquiring, I think, 43 acres, something like 40 acres, something like that in Hodge Park up on top of the hill there that's not been developed other than the remote control airfield. And we'll be putting a facility there on our next bond issue. But we're going to get the infrastructure going and some of those pieces so that we'll be ready for it when the kids start showing up. We think that that's probably a 5-year plan for us to get that one up and going. So have a little bit of time there as we continue to increase space for kids. Any questions on our capacity or building projects that's going on within our school district?
Yeah, Dan, anything on your demographers that indicating what your anticipated growth are with the Early Childhood Center? You mentioned that it might draw people from, all over the state to the area. Are you figuring that into your demographic projections?
Dave, that's a really good question. We figured it into our policy considerations where, policy requires you to have residency in North Kansas City to take advantage of our programming. And we want to make sure we stay firm on that because your tax dollars, everybody on here's tax dollars is going to pay for us, and we can't accept kids from other school districts without a revenue source. So that's kind of the work we're doing. We have a demographer that's going to report to our board in December 8th. And his initial findings is that is much like what we all see. In my meeting with him is that, boy, you better have a good plan for up north because they're building houses and selling them just as quickly as they can. You're seeing some regreening down south, but you're certainly going to continue to grow. Actually this year, when the school year started, we were short. We were about where we were at the end of last year, and for for North Kansas City, that's kind of was a short deal. We had to go find kids. The kids are still here. They just weren't signing up for school. And then what we ended up finding out is that we were 200 kindergartners short. So when we started contacting parents of these kindergartners that weren't showing up, they're telling us that with COVID and the uncertainty of the educational model, they didn't feel comfortable sending their kids. So one of the questions that we're having right now is, do you think these kids are going to show up in kindergarten next year, or do you think they're going to show up in first grade? And if they show up in first grade, man, they're going to be frustrated missing a year of education. And what are we going to do to try to support the kids that haven't had kindergarten yet? And in terms of maybe summer school, or how we provide extra supports for our kindergarten teachers or first grade teachers next year, and make sure these kids are successful. We're back up. I think we're now about 100 kids more than where we ended last year. So if you take those other 200 kindergartners that didn't show, we're continuing to see that growth. I don't know. We could be the second largest now. Rockwood School District is second largest, but I don't think they've ever come back. I think they're still doing virtual, so they're allowed to use their counts from last year, but they said they've lost a lot of kids to private school on the St. Louis side. So we'll keep running that down and figure out where we are in terms of size in our state. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Well, I know many of you have been participating on our high school committees, whether it be the Portrait of a Graduate or executive councils, and we certainly appreciate that. North Kansas City is going under transformation in our high schools. To simply say it, it's a little bit more like what you see with Northland Caps, but we're going to do that within all 4 of our high schools. All 4 of our high schools are going to have their own pathways. And we're going to really start focusing in on internships, projects, mentoring, many of those things in different pathways to support our high school kids. It's going to be a transformation. What we know, not only in North Kansas City, but throughout our state, is that the longer you stay in school, the less engaged kids become. And so we got to find different ways to engage kids at the secondary level. And we believe that this will be one. If they get to choose a pathway, a career pathway, whether they want to do that forever or not, at least it'll give meaning to the learning in which they're going to go through. We have engaged a ton of people. Tammy is kind of leading up our partnership to engage our business partners and work with Dr. Sutton, who's over academic services, to ensure that we have the connections. Each one of our classes in North Kansas City is about 15 to 1,600 kids. And so when you start thinking about trying to find internship opportunities, mentors, jobs, all of those different pieces, it's going to require this whole community to help us make that happen. I know I've signed up for two interns myself. I'm anxious to get them in here and get them working on a couple of projects that we're doing. So we're going to roll this out to our 9th graders next year, and then each year after that continue. So in 4 years, we'll be we'll have 4 pathways at each high school for all 4 classes. And we're certainly excited to make that happen as we continue to push forward. We have some of the very best elementary schools right here in North Kansas City within not only our state, but our nation. We have 3 national blue ribbon schools. Our middle schools, our 6th grade centers are doing fabulous. We've seen increased achievement at both 6th grade centers. And then our middle schools have taken on a new shape as well and are doing very, very well. This last piece is, how do we re-engage some of our high school kids that may not be as engaged as we'd want them to be. So for instance, if you're an IB student, your engagement's extremely high. A gold medallion student, your engagement's really high. If you go to the Northland Career Center, your engagement's extremely high. If you are a Northland CAPS kid, your engagement's extremely high. But then once you start to lose those specialized programs, the engagement of our students seems to drop off pretty bad. And so what we're trying to figure out is, how do we ensure all kids within North Kansas City have strong engagement all 4 years, to ensure that when they leave us, that not only are they college ready, but they're also career ready. They can take the skills in which they've learned, and they should have a competitive advantage against kids from other school districts when they leave us. They should be able to have their LinkedIn accounts should be updated with all the market value assets that they've acquired with us. That we should have their FAFSA paperwork completed. We should have their college enrollments completed. All of those things that the student would like to have should be in good shape, so when they leave us that they're very marketable. And that's something we're certainly interested in seeing how it progresses. And I know Tammy and I would certainly field any questions if you have them on those particular ones.
It's really an exciting time, and many of you are either involved and if you're not involved with one of the pathways, we'd love to involve you. We have 4 actual pathways: business leadership and entrepreneurship. We have the design and innovation and technology pathway. We have a health services and a human services. So if any of those sound like something that you all would want to be involved with, we would love it. Deb, I know I sent you an invitation to the human services meeting coming up, so I hope you might be willing to join us. And I know David is on the Industry Executive Council, which helps oversee all of it. So we appreciate everybody's involvement. It's going to take a lot from the business community to really set this program off. So we're real excited about it.
Thanks, Tammy. I think that there's good work being done by everyone. In terms of moving forward, we'll see who our president ends up being and all of that, but we're anticipating a pretty tough legislative year coming up. Tammy's gearing up for a heavy one. Our lobbyists, our educational advisors are all telling us that the school choice people are going to come at us hard because of not just North Kansas City, but public schools as a whole, because of the quarantine, the virtual schooling that's happening. A lot of the smaller school districts are struggling more so than the bigger school districts, obviously, and that's going to probably be a target for school choice people. And so we'll just continue to work and share the good things that are going on within our school district and how we've modified and adjusted to try to support kids. But it could be a very interesting year down there. We'll wait and find out. Tammy, you have anything you want to add on that?
No, the only thing is even with this special session that was just called, they've expanded the call, and the education reformers are trying to get them to expand it even further to divert some federal CARES dollars to private schools. And that's not what this special session was called for, but those are the types of issues we're going to be dealing with this year is them trying to find ways to divert public money to private concerns. There was a lot of money pumped into races from education reformers outside of our state. So I think this is the reason, obviously, that they do it. And so we do have our hands full, I think, this session.
Yeah. And certainly we're not, I'm sorry, Tammy.
No, I was just going to say, I know the floor leader has made some sort of education reform, not the floor leader, the Speaker of the House, some form of education reform is like his #1 priority this year. But what that will look like is anybody's guess at this point.
Yeah. I think we have to continue to keep our eye on the prize, though, and that is ensuring that we do the very best job with the 21,000 plus kids that we get to serve on a daily basis, and keep sharing the good news and making them successful. It certainly is a bigger challenge right now, but I do believe at some point we will get back to normal. All the health professionals I talk to tell me that we're getting ready to go through a tough stretch here. With the election crowds, the Thanksgiving crowds, and the Christmas crowds, they don't see us going in the right direction. I hope they're wrong. I really, really want to bring more kids back into our buildings, but we can only do so when safe to do. And I think that that's going to be a challenge in which we're going to fight for a little while here. And so that was pretty much all I had prepared. I would love to answer any other questions that folks might have over our school district, and I know Tammy's here and she could help as well.
I was glad to hear that the 6th grade center experiment is working out well. That's exciting. Because
yeah,
you guys, you didn't know how it would work when you rolled it out, but you nailed it. Good for you.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. We have really great teachers there, and Dave, honestly, what we did is we knew that sixth graders were underperforming in our middle schools, and we knew that they were not mature enough to be there. And so our goal was to reel it back a little bit to make it more like elementary, not tell the kids that we were making it more like elementary, but take away some of the things that they just weren't ready for. And by doing that, what we were able to do is focus more on instruction and less on the social aspects of sixth grade or middle school, I guess you'd say. So we've been very fortunate. Staff's doing a great job. And overall, man, I'm just so impressed with our staff. The majority of them are in there fighting every day. I think it was August, we'd served over 1 million meals since March in terms of supporting our families. And I think we can go through the end of December by still allowing everyone to eat free. And we're going to continue to do that. But our staff just continues to step up to the plate and work extremely hard. Not to say that they're not concerned about the secondary folks aren't concerned about coming back full time. There's a few of them that aren't real thrilled and let me have it pretty good every time we start talking about increasing the face-to-face interaction, but we'll get them there.
My other question is, with all these kids being virtually educated, how are they getting fed? The ones that were typically on free and reduced.
Yeah, they can still come by and get lunches. I just heard yesterday that we are creating a week box here very soon for parents to come by and pick up a week's worth of breakfast and a week's worth of lunches for kids, so they're not coming every day because some folks are having a hard time getting here every day. But we have what we call kind of a drive-through. The parents just drive through. We have folks outside that poke it through the window and away they go.
It's pretty impressive when one of our schools and they're involved in the middle of that. I mean, they have it down to a science how they get those lunches and get those people through the line.
Dave, if you've not had the opportunity to be through a school in the last few years, certainly now's not a good time with COVID. But our granddaughter was at the sixth grade center at Eastgate last year. Phenomenal. And school certainly isn't like it was when I was a kid, but it's not even like it was when my kids went. You just really get the feeling that not only are the kids more engaged, the staff's more engaged. I mean, feel stronger relationships. She just thrived. I just thought it was excellent.
Before COVID, I tried to get out to my schools on a regular basis in the Pleasant Valley Pre-K or Gracemore or Maple Park or Winnetonka. I love spending time at Winnetonka. I'm sorry, that's where these kids get the biggest push from it. And that's where they're in danger and of going down the wrong path or whatever. And it's just great to meet with them. And
yeah,
can't do that.
Yeah, I worry a lot about our kids right now, particularly those ones that are saying they're doing virtual, but they're not engaging. I worry a lot about them. Some of them have told us they found jobs and are just going to try to do the work in the evenings or whenever they can get to it. But we have worked so hard in the last 5 or 6 years in North Kansas City to close the achievement gap and to be a high achieving school district all the way through. And we've done that. And I worry that COVID's destroying it a little bit, but it's not just destroying it for North Kansas City, it's statewide. And so how do we get our feet back underneath us once we're able to is going to be key, because our staff is extremely talented, our kids are bright, and we got to figure this thing out. The longer we go have this virtual option this strong, the bigger the academic gap is going to be, and it's going to be more of a challenge for us to close that gap again.
I think, though, that it's going to not only, I think this is a really, really hard time to grow up between a pandemic coming after all of us and just crazy political climate, which I know my grandkids, which are all a little older, it's frightening to them.
Yeah.
Certainly, I remember hearing my parents say they liked or didn't like a president, but the amount of venom that's out there, we try to keep our tone down. I think kids have a whole lot on their mind. I think it's a real tough time right now to grow up. Hopefully, next few days things will start to calm down, at least on one end of it.
Yeah.
You stop and think about it, to be 12 or 13 years old and there's a pandemic that's killing people and people are ranting and raving and there doesn't appear to be a lot of trust in the government from a lot of people. I don't think it's just school, and I don't know that even getting them there is going to help you a whole lot.
That could be very true, and that's where, you know, this community has been so helpful to the North Kansas City School District in terms of the Clay County Children's Service Fund. The amount of counseling, the amount of social emotional needs that kids possess today compared to what they possessed when most of us went through school is thousandfold. And we utilize those dollars to support our kids, and try to find them and then provide the supports to them. I think the number I last heard is we had around 300 kids pick up computers that said they were going virtual that we haven't been able to find since they picked up their computers. And so we can obviously shut their computers off and such, but that's pretty scary to think there's 300 kids out there that we have no idea where they are. We've been to their house. We've been to where, you know, their parents had marked they were employed and are having a hard time finding them.
Dr. Clemens, this is a little bit of a new guy question, but I love to hear the services and resources that the school system provides to these kids. And you mentioned earlier that, I think twice you mentioned that private interests are really a major source of frustration for you folks in terms of getting resources for yourselves. So I'm curious, from the perspective of a citizen, what can they do to sort of advocate for public schooling in a way that will be effective? And I'm thinking, you know, generally, but specifically now during a pandemic as well.
Yeah, you know, our community has been outstanding in supporting North Kansas City Schools, Liberty, Park Hill, Smithville, Platte County. This community has stood behind us every step of the way. The problem we have is typically comes from the St. Louis side or the South Kansas City side, in terms of lawmakers or communities not being as supportive of their local school districts. We certainly hold the lion's share of students within our community, and lost maybe a few to some upset parents that we weren't going 5 days a week and insisted that if we weren't going 5 days a week at the secondary, they were going to send their kids to private school, and completely understood that. I mean, we had to do what we had to do, and they needed to do what was in the best interest of their kids. So in terms of what can we do as a community, I would suggest that when you talk to the local lawmakers, is that you just remind them that you're pleased with the level of education that occurs north of the river, and don't see change. We did open ourselves up a little bit more than we have traditionally been open, but it probably was for the right reason. I don't know one way or the other, but we are now going to be a charter county, and charter counties have a little bit more legislation has a little bit more ability to force charter schools and choice schools in charter counties than they do and non-charter counties. So that'll be another fight we'll have down in Jeff City this year, is trying to keep ours out of it. But I would say just continue to share the good news, take our good news and share it, and continue to support the public schools with our lawmakers are probably the biggest things we can do. And we continue to work with folks south of our river here in Kansas City, but also in St. Louis, to try to get them to be more active. That seems to be where most of the push comes for privatizing public education. Tammy, do you have anything you would share in addition?
No, not really. I think that, as Danny suggested, I think it's important to make sure that policymakers realize we're happy with our schools. They hear a lot of unhappiness from other parts of the state and tend to use a broad brush with that. So, you know, I think that it's important that we communicate with our lawmakers. A lot of times when we have a specific issue at the state, NNI has been so helpful in notifying lawmakers that that's not something they want for their community. And those types of things go a long way. They get kind of crabby down there sometimes when we trot superintendents and others down to testify, and they're not very nice. So any groups like NNI and different civic and business groups, that really goes a long way.
I just have to interject something. When you say, how good the community is to you and how good the community is to the school district, I would agree. But I would also say I wouldn't want anyone to think that's because you have everybody in for cookies and coffee once a year. It's a very demanding community as far as the school district is concerned, and this school district has met and exceeded, I believe, the expectations, which is why when you go to the polls, it's 80% yes. It's why Mayor James found out real quickly what North Kansas City School District constituents thought of their school district. I'm just, with the huge demographic changes in the school district the last 15 years, 20 years, which I'm not being critical of those demographic changes, but they have been a huge challenge for the school district. And not only are you looking for high averages, you're really looking for success for each and every kid. And the minute you didn't do that, you'd be hearing from people, probably most of the people on this call. You can tell I'm working from home when the dogs start barking.
We're just saying the dogs are agreeing with you, Deb.
Dan, I've got one other question. We hear about the athletics and the football games and everything like this, but I never hear anything about the arts, band, choir, orchestra. What's happening with that within the district?
Yeah, we are having extreme success. I think when Northtown's debate team just got named one of the top 100 debate teams in the country, and they're doing extremely well. When I said Northtown, right? Winnetonka's theater department is got to be, if not the best, one of the best. They've earned more Cappies and Blue Stars than anybody in Kansas City. Their performance with Shrek last year was it was something that you would expect to see on a much bigger stage with much more professional actors. Our kids do extremely well. Throughout, the one thing I think we're continuing to work on is the size of our bands. This year we can only have so many kids out in the field, but we're trying to encourage more kids to be involved in band. Orchestra strong, choir strong, theater strong, debate strong, but band is the one area we continue to work on. And sometimes I think it's the kids just have too many choices, and we're having a hard time recruiting. But that is one of our goals. One of our goals is to have 100 kids in every band. And I think most of them are getting close to that goal.
Good.
Yeah. My son, for those of you who don't know, he's now at Loyola in Chicago, but he was a big theater kid at Staley High School, and he certainly enjoyed it, and that really gave me a different experience and appreciation for the fine arts within the school district, and we have a pretty strong emphasis there. Well, we only had to close down one football team for COVID, and that was Oak Park last week. We actually closed down the school for 2 days and did a deep clean. They held the election there on Tuesday, so we wanted to keep it closed for the election as well. But kids are back, and we've got the COVID spread under control. We actually had 6 football coaches. I'm guessing the football coaches, when they were watching film, weren't wearing masks because 6 of them developed COVID, which then the football coach's wife is a counselor, so then the counselor's department started getting it. One of the coach's sons is the quarterback, so then you can imagine how quickly that went. So we just had to shut it down for a little bit. I was just notified yesterday on their first practice, Staley's basketball group is quarantined for 14 days because they had a positive test of one of the kids. So, I think it's just the atmosphere we're in. We're going to see some of that, and we're going to do our best to control it. But I do think we're going to see that continue to happen until we can kind of get over the hump here. Yeah. Well, it's certainly been my pleasure to be able to share wonderful things about school district and share some of the challenges that we have. As Deb said, I say this a lot, but I truly mean it. I certainly appreciate the community support. This is a wonderful place to work, a wonderful place for kids to go to school, and we know it wouldn't be that way if it wasn't for you guys.
Well,
The only
thank you.
comment I would make is that with the demographic of Clay County growing and the number of building permits continuing to expand, it speaks well of the school districts in the area, because without that kind of draw, I don't think this would be happening. I think this is one of the absolute biggest reasons that Clay County continues to grow and prosper. And as we do that, and as our businesses develop, it's going to be a tremendous challenge. But I know you guys and all of the other school districts are up to it, and you're to be congratulated for being able to keep pace with the tremendous growth, because I know it's been more than expected 2 or 3 years in a row, and it presents tremendous challenges. But you're to be commended for adapting to it and being able to do it, even with this junk thrown into the mix with the COVID. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Just for everyone to know, NNI is moving. Our new office is supposed to be completed by Thanksgiving, so we will spend, dates aren't exact, we do know January 4th, that's the first business day of the new year. We will be open at 5340 North Shoto. Very exciting. It's going to be a really good move for NNI. With that, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you participating. It's refreshing to hear the good news from the school district.
I want to throw something out there too. Oh, sorry, Dr. Clemens, go ahead.
I'm good.
Oh, the Clay County EDC is having a virtual career fair along with the NEBA, which is Northland Education Business Alliances. So we're partnering with the schools. We've got 24 lines of business, and we've been pushing out their superintendents. But the cool thing about it is that the governor got wind of it, and he wants an introductory on that. So these kids will all start their virtual career fair hour by hearing from our governor. And it's because of the work y'all are doing. It's fantastic that we're getting that done. And the last thing I'd like to do is thank everybody for voting for that new Clay County Constitution. That was pretty good showing that we need to have that happen. And thanks for providing a platform, Deb, for letting us present one day at NNI, and 81% is a pretty good mandate that says let's get this fixed, because we got our schools, we got our cities, but now let's get our county in line, and we'll soar from there.
All right, well, if nobody else has a comment, we're a little early today. We can go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving, because I don't know if we'll be together before then. So, take care. Ed, do we have anything else we need to talk about?
Nope, that's it. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Clemens, thank you for sharing all that you did. It's awfully proud. I think everybody should be proud about Northland and the Northland schools. So thank you.
All right, all. Bye.